So they say that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Now, yeah, that might be the shortest distance, but it's not always the fastest. And if you're the B&O, you got a bit of a problem with a straight line. Hi, this is Trevor.
And this is James.
From History on the Move.
And today we are going to delve into the history of the B&O's solution to that problem, the Baltimore Belt Line.
We'll get into that on this episode. Grab that favorite cup of coffee, tea, juice, whatever the heck you're drinking these days. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode as we take you on a journey of roughly 7 miles from Camden out to Bay View Yard. Okay, so I am at Canton Waterfront here in downtown Baltimore. Absolutely beautiful. I highly recommend you come here, by the way. But we're here for another reason. We're here to talk about why the B&O got into this conundrum of the Belt Line and why was it built? Well, so if you look to my right, so this is heading south, the two holding tanks you see there, that is the location to where the existing line prior to the Belt Line came down. Again, it came out of Bay View Junction, headed south, and it ended up there. And from that point, all the way across the harbor behind me, to where you see the giant structure there with the windows, that is the grain elevator. But that was where the car floats would be. And that's where they ended up. And then, as you know, we know they came there and then they headed circuitously to Camden Station. But if you think about this on just in a real world view, and that's what we're going for here, think about the logistics nightmare that it is to bring a passenger train down from Jersey City / New York down to here, get each car onto this car float, and then head across to Locust Point, to where then they need to be unloaded, put back into the consist, and then taken to Camden Station. I mean, it just, the logistical nightmares are utterly horrendous. And that was not for the faint of heart. And sadly, that trackage is not there anymore. But, you know, it's really intriguing to know that this was what the B&O could do for that time frame. It's all they had. You know, Baltimore's still a very growing city at that point. And there wasn't a whole lot infrastructure-wise that they had thought about. And again, this is where we get the Belt Line. And, you know, we're going to get into that further in this video, but this creates, this is a good history for us to understand, again, visually, what the B&O had to overcome to go through the city.
We're standing here at Camden Station. In the late 1800s, this was the B&O's primary hometown station. Trains reaching this point from the north relied on a rather inefficient and circuitous method of transportation. This was twofold. First off, the Philadelphia, Wilmington, and Baltimore Railroad, and second off, a car float running from east of the city in Canton to Locust Point, in the southern part of the city where the B&O had a large yard. Trains would then travel northward to reach this point at Camden Station. But in the late 1880s, the Pennsylvania Railroad, which was the B&O's primary competitor, bought the PW&B and denied the B&O trackage rights over this section of track. So what was the B&O to do? The answer was to be the crown jewel of the B&O in the city of Baltimore. It became known as the Baltimore Belt Line. It ran here from Camden Station all the way out to Bay View Yard, east of the city near Canton. And a primary feature of that was the Howard Street Tunnel. Where you can see right here is the current day MTA light rail tracks. But underneath this is a 130-year-old tunnel, the Howard Street Tunnel. This was constructed in 1890 to 1895 and it opened in 1896. And it was an audacious project. The new Belt Line would run directly under the center of downtown Baltimore. Because of that, there were a lot of considerations that had to be taken in order to not disrupt, the central business district of Baltimore, residents, that sort of thing. This was created and actually led by lead engineer Samuel Rea, who was from the Pennsylvania Railroad, interestingly enough. This was a period of intense competition, and good brain power would often be poached from competitors. Samuel Rea designed this tunnel using a masonry arch. It's essentially a double arch design. There's a tall arch, right, forming the main structure of the tunnel, and then the bottom of the tunnel is another arch. This is similar to how maybe like a dam or something would be constructed, but it spreads out the load and makes it very strong. The tunnel was constructed using a method constructed known as the German method. We'll show this on screen, but essentially what this consisted of was two smaller tunnels were dug, and then the sides of the tunnel were constructed. And then above them, a third tunnel was constructed in order to construct the roof of the tunnel, leaving a large berm of earth in the center. This was able to provide support, and large amounts of timber bracing were used to support the masonry as it was being constructed. Finally, when the main structure of the tunnel was complete, the timber bracing was removed and the central earth was dug out, leaving the Howard Street Tunnel. Now, the central portion of the tunnel from Lombard Street in downtown Baltimore up to Preston Street were built using this complex German method. South of Lombard Street and north of Preston Street, so from Lombard Street to Camden Station, where we stand now, and north Preston Street to Mount Royal Station, which we'll show you later in the video, the tunnel was built using a cut and cover method, in which essentially a large trench was built in the ground, and the tunnel was constructed, the masonry arch was built, and then covered back over. This was simpler, less work intensive, and safer for workers. It was also significantly cheaper, meaning that the B&O was able to construct the tunnel economically and provide a profit-making link northward of the city and south. Behind me, where you can see the light rail train pulling in right now, was originally a sunken platform at the level of the Howard Street Tunnel, right? Because the tunnel was built below street level. This is where passengers would embark on trains such as the Royal Blue, Capital Limited, National Limited, things like this that went to New York and then out to places like Chicago, Cleveland, things like that. And because of that, this platform was covered over with a large train shed, not dissimilar from the one you might see later on in the video at Mount Royal. And that's going to be our next stop. So we're going to actually show you, take you up the route of Howard Street, following the route of the tunnel, and we'll stop up at Mount Royal. We're now 2 miles north of Camden Station at the north end of the Howard Street Tunnel. We're here at the B&O's Mount Royal Station. This was built and opened in 1896 to serve the growing suburbs of northern Baltimore. This is up near North Avenue. This station was the secondary hometown stop of the Belt Line, really kind of the crown jewel, I would say. It was renowned for its architecture and beauty. One of the main features, of course, is the 800-foot-long train shed. This is a iron and wood truss structure. This is actually very similar to the one that was built and is no longer present at Camden Station. So that gives you an idea for that. Of course, any infrastructure project of this size, and particularly a tunnel, is going to require some specialized engineering, particularly in the area of motive power.
Thanks, James. Let's talk a little bit more about this motive power. This is a place where the B&O really shines. They really do just monumental things in the history of railroading. So, what's going on here? Well, it's the 1890s, and most railroads, if not all of them, are using steam locomotives as their motive power. Now, we have to keep in mind that the B&O is no exception to this. We also have to keep in mind that the Howard Street Tunnel is a 1.7 mile long tunnel, but it's also, if you're heading out of Camden, heading north, it's on a 0.8% continuous grade. That means that it rises 72 feet the entire length of the tunnel. It's a continuous ascension. Again, heading northbound. So the B&O has this problem, right? And what do they do about this? Well, they figure what we can do is for at least 3.75 of a mile, 3.7 miles from Camden Station up to what once was called Waverly Tower, or is now known as Huntington Avenue, there was electrification. And this is very primitive for the time frame. This is groundbreaking. Nobody's really done this to this extent on a main line. Now, to start off with, to elevate the routes, right, to put it up on, to get it out of the city streets would have been cost prohibitive. So they figured, well, let's run it underneath. That's how we get the tunnel. That's also how we get the train shed behind me, as well as these series of portals. It's a lot more, it's a lot cheaper to do this. So let's start off with, the B&O builds the powerhouse between Lee and Hamburg streets in Baltimore in this time frame of 1890 to 1895. They have water tube boilers in there, stationary boilers, that then feed steam to these compound coreless engines that then spin, they're reciprocating engines, and then they help to generate this power. They spin generators, and then they create power for the third rail, as well as the tunnel lighting. Now, the third rail is 600 volts DC. The tunnel lighting, though, is AC, alternating current. DC direct current, AC alternating current. And these generators are massive. There's multiple. There are at least 5 of these, and they're each putting out 500 kilowatts. In 1892, the B&O contracts with General Electric, and General Electric really comes into their own. This is their big project for the B&O, and they designed the entire infrastructure that if this was 1892, you would see this, but it's long since been torn out. But they designed everything, the locomotives, the overhead pantograph system, everything. And essentially what it was they had this little Z-shaped bar that sat in a track above. On the third rail was suspended, again above me here is where it would be. And the first locomotive, aptly named number 1, was built by General Electric, and it had a pantograph that would kind of tilt and was on this mobile base on the roof, and it would tilt and move back and forth to keep that contact with the overhead third rail. But as you can probably guess, again, heading north, you would need the electric locomotives, but heading south, it's a descending grade. You're just heading downhill. So the steam locomotives are basically coasting, but they're still putting out exhaust. And that exhaust, the gases and the coal smoke or whatever, over time began to cover up and create a lot of grime and basically put layers onto that overhead third rail. And so they figured out that it was a lot easier and probably cheaper to then move that overhead third rail down to track level. And so that was in 1902. So this is where you get the move from the overhead rail down to the ground level. And the neat part here is the cutoff, if you will, for these electric locomotives is up at Huntington Avenue. So what happened is, again, from Camden Station all the way up there, 3.7 miles, there's a third rail that runs the whole length. And when they get up to Huntington Avenue, they cut off. It's what's called a flying switch, essentially. The steam locomotive is still pulling its train. The electric locomotive uncouples, heads into the clear. There's a central track, and then the steam engine and its consist continue north onto Bay View and points north there. And so this is really, really fascinating. Again, so the number 1 locomotive weighed 98 tons, built by GE at their Schenectady locomotive plant in New York. And it was basically a semi-permanent coupled, it had a big tang in between, a big coupler almost. And each one of those traction motors on there put out 360 horsepower. And that's in DC, remember. This whole thing is in direct current. And it used what they call a gearless quill drive. And what that was is, it essentially was a hub with a series of little, they're hardened shafts that came out, and that's what turned the wheel. And again, these things had a drawbar pull of about 45,000 to 49,000 pounds of tractive effort here. And they were able to achieve speeds of 35 to 40 miles an hour with about a 500-ton passenger train. They also could easily get up to almost 2,000 tons of train behind them. So These locomotives were state of the art. And again, this is GE at their absolute finest when it comes to this engineering. And they began their trial run on June 27th, 1895. This is the first time, you can mark your history books, folks, this is the first time we're seeing an electric locomotive run on the main line in the United States. There were 2 additional locomotives that looked just like number 1. They were eventually retired by 1903, and they picked up new motive power from 1903 to 1910. Again, GE provides this stuff exclusively to the B&O. There were these very European-looking engines and just boxes, you know, these little sloped roofs over these things. And then from 1910 to 1952, you get the steeple cab locomotives. And these are almost synonymous with electric railways, you know, things that run with either overhead or third rail. So that's a little bit more about the motive power in here. I think, you know, we have a lot more ground to cover, so let's continue heading north on the Belt Line.
We're now here along Falls Road in Baltimore. This is alongside the Jones Falls, and behind me you can see the bridge that the B&O built over the Jones Falls. This originally carried somewhere between 3 to 4 tracks. I'm not entirely sure. The tunnel originally had 2 tracks and then had some gauntlet tracks and sidings, that sort of thing. So in the station there were at least 4 tracks originally. Obviously, over time, this has been pared down. Now I believe there's only 1 active track going over the bridge. But yeah, this is just another piece of infrastructure that was built. It's a large curved bridge over this river valley, and it goes up here, so keeping everything on the same route, the same height. It goes across, and then this is where the Belt Line comes up and then turns. You can see in this curve here, it's turning east, to go out towards Bay View Yard.
When you got no sight, consequence when the shadows go and creep into the light, gonna be all right. Yeah. Till the moon gets low and the sun goes down, till the house gets built on the edge of the town. I'm alive, it's a wonderful time. Alive.
We're now at mile marker about 3 3/4, just past the Jones Falls, the bridge we just showed. This is where the track really starts to turn and go east. At this level, the streets are going over it. We're standing on Huntington Avenue. This is notable because this is where the electric locomotives would have cut off, actually in front of me, would have cut off from the steam locomotives in a flying cutoff, and they would have gone into the center track. Behind me, you can see at Howard Street, a little bit confusingly, there's a tunnel that goes underneath it, but this time perpendicular. And these sorts of small bridge tunnels go all the way across the city from west to east, heading all the way out towards Bay View Yard.
So this is a segment on the show that we call Cite Your Sources. Where does that come from? Well, as a former history major, Towson University is where I went, I had a wonderful history professor by the name of Dr. Robert Rook. And I'd sit in his office at the university and I'd have historical discussions with him and make arguments. I'd say this, that, and the other, and he'd say, well, that's great, Trevor, but you need to cite your sources. So I'd cite my sources and we'd see if I was right or wrong. Most of the time I was probably wrong. But let's get into this. So what did James and I use to make this episode for you today? Well, there's a couple of things here. First of all, you want to learn more about the electric locomotives like we talked about? Well, When the Steam Railroad's Electrified by William Middleton is a phenomenal read. Can't recommend this enough. He really gets into the weeds of electrification along main lines and branch lines in the U.S. And he gives a special shout out to the B&O. It's about maybe 3-4 pages worth of it here. But I got some really good information out of Mr. Middleton. So well done, Mr. Middleton. Again, read this. It's not exactly a pleasure reading book, but it gives you some really good ideas as to what electrification looked like in the U.S. Again, going back to the electric locomotives, B&O Power by Alvin Stauffer, whoever that guy's name is, and Lawrence Sagel. Lawrence Sagel was actually the first, he was one of the public relations guys for the B&O and one of the founding fathers, if you will, of the B&O Transportation Museum, now known as the B&O Railroad Museum. So this is awesome. There's a great write-up about the electric locomotives used right here on the Belt Line. So check this one out. This is really good. You want to learn more about the Royal Blue Line, like James mentioned at the beginning of the video? Cannot recommend enough. Herbert H. Harwood. There's a lot of good information in here. James and I actually volunteer alongside his son, George, at the museum. So awesome. Again, if you want to learn Royal Blue, this is pretty much the definitive Bible to the Royal Blue Line. And if you're in Baltimore and you want to learn more about the B&O in Baltimore itself, this is a hallmark. B&O Historical Society did a phenomenal job. So if you guys at the Historical Society are watching this, cannot give you enough kudos. You did a phenomenal job. Brian, James, and I on this channel, we use this a lot. This is a really solid reference point. Great maps, great photos, you name it, you hit it on the mark right here. And also, magazines are a good choice. If you got things like Trains Magazine from the time frame, there's a Larry Sagel article in here. There is the B&O Employee Magazine that Daniel Willard started. That was his idea back in 1912. Or the Sentinel, which is the B&O Historical Society's magazine. Great information, pretty much peer-reviewed. You can't get any better than that. And again, if you go out there and you look for these sources, please be definitive in your sources. You know, the internet's great, but you shouldn't believe everything you read or watch on the internet. Just look at James and I. Also, you know, if you borrow these books from people, please return them, please. You know, nobody likes books that just go pop, 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 and they walk away and they never come home. Homeless books hurt the heart. If you were to, you know, buy these books, buy them from a reputable dealer. You know, I'm not telling you where to buy. I'm not trying to say anything, but just get them wherever you find books most comfortable for your wallet. And the big thing here is, please buy your books. Don't steal them. So something else I want to bring up is a place that James and I went. We had lunch, actually. So again, you can see behind me, we're still at Mount Royal here. And we ate at the Brass Tap. They had a jazz band playing. I mean, we really had a good time. That was a hoot and a holler. Great food, great people. So if you're in the Mount Royal area, and you just came here maybe to rail fan or watch whatever, or read the signage here, take a visit to the Brass Tap. I don't think you'd be disappointed. So big shout out to those guys. Great, great venue. Can't say enough good things. So let's get back to the program. So this is it. This is the end of our journey of some 7 3/4 mile from Camden Station out here to Bay View Junction. Now granted, this is CSX's Bay View Yard, and you can't ride the Royal Blue from here up to New York, but we hope you enjoyed this. If you were to look west of us, you would see the series of bridges that would basically bring the main line from Greenmount, which is the last tunnel, up to Bay View Junction.
And I think we've really covered some of the, we've learned a lot about some of the infrastructural developments that had to happen between tunnels, bridges, electrification, new stations. This is really a testament to the modernization and the engineering prowess of the Baltimore, Ohio.
Just a monumental feat when you really break it down. So this is Trevor.
This is James.
From History on the Move. Get out there. I want you to read history, explore history, but most importantly, we want you to make your own history. We'll see you on the next one.